cleared for low visibility operations at airports that are impacted. That number of aircraft is up to over 90% today. Boise Airport was not on the list of initial airports to be impacted. However, we were preparing to be ready to take diversion flights should there be low visibility at any of our surrounding airports like Seattle. I don't know if it's related, but not this past weekend, but the weekend before, we had about 16 diversions in one day, which is very unusual for us. The holidays seem like they were a long time ago, but they really weren't. We did have some winter weather and airline cancellations. We also had the therapy dogs out to the airport to help passengers and reduce stress. We did have some very good media coverage, and we did have sufficient airport parking to accommodate all passengers, but our parking facilities were nearly at peak capacity, particularly the garage and the surface lot. So we were using, and we continue to use, the economy lot as an overflow. You may recall we constructed the Idaho Transportation Department new building on the south side of the airfield that was officially certified under the Green Construction Code. And again, this was a building that we built so that way we could accommodate that new consolidated car rental facility. One of the things that we talked about previously is our staffing and our ability to accommodate the growth that we are seeing at the airport with our existing staff, and possibly ways that we might want to restructure to be more effective. This was something that actually was a suggestion from our commission chair, Meg Carlson, and so I want to recognize and thank Meg for her foresight. And basically, not a surprise, it shows that based on our current size, we would not be able to adequately handle the growth and potential expansion. We did this organization assessment back in 2018, and it brought us up to speed for where we were at that time, but it doesn't position us really for the future. So that's what we're looking at. So where we are today, we did some staff interviews. There's consensus that the workload exceeds capacity. There were lots of recommendations from the team about how to best do that. And they did note that communication between the departments has continued to improve. So that's great. We will be doing analysis of 6 different airports, and they've received data from 3 so far, and we're waiting on 3. We're looking at the gap analysis, looking at, are there any specific specialties that we are missing or that we should add? And then the organizational structure and reporting lines. How do we make sure that we're using our team most effectively? And as we grow, are there things that we need to do in our structure to just be more effective and efficient? So for example, when I started here 10 years ago, our airfield maintenance team was Monday through Friday. Well, the airport operates 24/7. So we needed to have a team that was here, 7 days a week. Those are the kind of changes that we need to be thinking about, and we need to be thinking about the future and how we accommodate future changes and future growth.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Can I ask a question at this point?
It's fine with me, if it's fine with our chair.
Yes. I'm just looking at the organization assessment and preparing for growth, and I recall here a year or two ago, Rebecca, as I recall, the airlines, we had a day when there was insufficient fuel at the airfield for some of the airlines, and I know you had a consultant come in and give us a report, and I kind of forget what that was, but I guess my question, as use of the airport grows, we have more airlines and more air carriers on the field. Has anything changed in terms of having for a place for the airlines to put their fuel? Do we have any storage on the airport, and now are we preparing to put fuel storage on the airport for the airlines?
That is an excellent question, Russ, and it's a very complicated answer. Our fuel situation has not changed over the last 4 years since we've looked at it. We have the same infrastructure today that we had 4 years ago, we did not have a fuel shortage in Boise specifically. There was a lot of discussion about fuel shortages. Particularly, I think Reno was hit pretty hard. I think we may have had a situation where the fuel did not meet specifications for a period of time, but it was a quality assurance issue, not a supply issue. That said, I have raised that exact question with our airline partners. I raised that question back in June, and I have continued to have follow-up conversations with them about that. I think it is something that we are going to need to address as part of our airline use and lease agreements, possibly. We're also going to want to talk to them about potentially consolidated de-icing facilities. So yes, fuel is definitely a critical path item that we need to be sure that we're paying attention to. Our airlines come here and they have an expectation that they're just going to be able to buy fuel, and we need to make sure that there's the infrastructure in place to do that. So that is on our radar as something to study again. I don't know that it's something that is urgent, but it is something that is a priority and that we need to be considering moving forward.
Well, thank you for that.
Madam Chairman, Rebecca?
Yes.
Rebecca, going along with the slide you showed a second ago, I certainly agree we probably need more staffing at the airport. Is there a staffing shortage currently? Are you able to fill the positions that you have? Or are you like most other organizations or employees that are looking for people, can't find people to hire?
In certain positions, we are struggling to fill certain positions. There's particularly a maintenance worker position that we're struggling to fill, custodial worker. We are actually, and I want to knock on wood here, in decent shape in respect to our airfield maintenance team, but there are a few areas where we are struggling to recruit, both at the entry level and the more advanced level. We did lose one of our employees for a very similar job where, he could make 50% more. So, that was in the finance and accounting field. So we are seeing it in pockets, and then, in general, and we're working on that. I think that's something that the city has seen and recognized. But there's not a quick solution for that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I guess I would add operations as well. We've struggled in that area to retain our team. We've had some movement, which has been great because we've had an opportunity to promote some people, which will be coming up soon in a future slide here. So the next steps on our organization assessment is to just look at how we want to approach our staffing allocation to alleviate strain on our existing resources and then opportunities for growth. We'll receive a final report, which will be a plan for our current state and also the future state. And it'll be something that we can phase in over time. But our hope is that we'll have this information prior to budget so we can include any requests for new staff in our budget build. Which brings me to our next slide, which is a couple of recent promotions. I want to give a huge shout out for Zach Thompson. He has been here for 15 years with the Boise Airport. He started as an operations specialist. He became an operations supervisor, and he recently was promoted to our operations security manager. He took over as interim security manager when his predecessor left. And Zach just did a phenomenal job throughout his time as interim. Brian Hill replaced Dwayne. Don't know if any of you knew Dwayne, but he was our facilities maintenance manager. He'd been here with the airport for a long time, and he retired. Brian Hill has taken over in that position. He has done a great job with the team, and I'm sure he's going to continue to move that team forward. They're the group that maintains all of our facilities at the airport. So think restrooms, HVAC, electrical, jet bridges, everything from the routine painting to the much more complex airfield lighting. And then this is happy for Rob, but not so happy for us. I don't know if any of you know Rob Livingston. He is retiring from Horizon Air, and his last day is in February. He's been the manager here for 28 years. He's a fixture at the Boise airport, and he has just been a tremendous partner to work with. He's just brings a lot of talent, a lot of expertise, and always a positive attitude. He's always a forceful advocate for his airline and for his team, but he always does it in the nicest way. So I really appreciate Rob, and I don't know if Rob had a chance to join the meeting or not, but we will certainly miss him. And then Ahmad with Delta, he's been here, I don't know exactly how long, but several years. And he was a great addition to the Boise Delta team, but he is leaving us to be promoted and have his own station in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And again, Ahmad has just been a wonderful team player. And I think all of our airlines and TSA and our own team members here would tell you that in Boise, the way that our airlines partners together with the airport and TSA and their competitors is very unique. And it's a really special place, and Ahmad has been part of making that collaboration work. And so we're excited for him to have this opportunity to be promoted and run his own station. But again, we'll hate to see him go. And I know probably no one will be sadder than Jim Moore, our local station manager. And then as we're talking about employees who are doing great things, Tara Sterling, who is the manager for all of our retail concessions, news and gift, was recognized by her company as the most valuable player in retail. And to be clear, Paradis LaGuardia they are an international company with facilities all over the US and internationally. And to have Tara's expertise here is just a huge asset for Boise and for our community. We have an opportunity to be the pilot location for lots of new technologies that they're implementing here and test them in Boise before they go on to other places. So we're getting the state-of-the-art technologies and equipment here in our stores. So it's great to have Tara here. And again, she's just a wonderful partner and is part of making the Boise airport community work the way that it does. So a huge shout out to Tara. I told her I was going to be talking about her at commission meeting, and she does usually join. So I suspect that she's here, but she hates to be in the spotlight. So moving on to some of the more routine things. December enplanements were down 12% compared to December 19. Again, probably trending about 10% ahead of the national average. And then 2021 total passengers were down about 12% compared to 2019. So our peak year, again, about 10% ahead of what we're seeing in the national average. And then these are just trend lines for what we're seeing. The yellow line there at the bottom, obviously, is the pandemic in 2020. And then you can see the darker blue line, the recovery where we actually exceeded passenger numbers in July and August. And then now we've dipped back below a little bit. Revenues, there's nothing really too noteworthy at this point. We're still really early in the fiscal year, and so any changes in this particular slide are really highlighted, and a lot of times it's just a timing issue. Parking lot revenue is going to be up quite a bit because of the return to passengers. Same thing with concessions. Overall operating revenue is up compared to last year, which is not surprising. Okay, and now my slide seems to be stuck. Oh, here we go. Operating expenses. Again, a lot of this is timing of different issues. There's nothing here that's really, I'm looking at terminal, for example, 423%, in 21, it was 16,000. Right now it's 83,000. I mean, that's 67,000 and change, and that is not substantial in the big picture. This is really just a timing thing. The credit card fees, that is really, and the parking management, that has to do with shuttling. And also the credit card fees, obviously more people parking, more fees. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Rebecca. At this point, any of the commissioners who would like further questions or conversation before we move into commissioner comments, just let me know. Okay, so let's move into commissioner comments, and I'm going to follow the order on my screen. So first person is General Saylor.
I have no comments this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Westerberg,
I have no comments this morning. Thank you.
Commissioner Bosiger,
I just wanted to commend the air traffic control tower and the airport operations for, I know it's a little bit delayed, but both runways are now open, and it's made a huge difference for, I think, everyone's state of mind who fly in and out of Boise a lot. It was a tough one runway for a while. And a couple of those weather days where we had to have the snow plows out and one runway closed, it was Boise's very busy, and it seems like everybody flies in at the same time on bad weather. So there's a lot of coordination that needs to happen, and it's done very well. So for all the snow plows and the ATC, I know they're all working together, and I know it's stressful, but it's really appreciated, especially when you're flying in bad weather. So thank you for that. That's all I have.
thank you. Commissioner Vasconcellos.
Over the holidays, my wife and I flew from Boise to Seattle to Calgary, and then back from Calgary, Canada, to through Denver back to Boise. And the flights were, well, we dodged a bullet on that flight back because it was the day that thousands of flights were canceled. And ours was delayed 4 hours. We took off from Denver after midnight. So that was a long day, but we felt lucky that we were able to get home. That was, I think, the 27th of December. And the other thing was, it was a little tricky to get the PCR test 3 days before, within 3 days before going to Canada. And then you had to get a rapid antigen test to get back into the US, and it was kind of hard to find one of those on a Sunday, but long story short, we had to go out to the Calgary airport for that. But anyway, that was kind of an adventure, and at least we were able to travel. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Walker.
I have nothing this morning. No
All
comments.
right. Oh, okay. And Commissioner Badgett.
Oh, I have nothing for you this morning. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a light travel season. Rebecca, I just want to thank you for sharing the promotions and sharing information about team members that you work with. It's a privilege, I know, to be able to work with quality human beings and leaders. It makes everybody's job and role so much better. So I thank you for sharing that. I have had no travel experience. We were supposed to be on a cruise right now on the legendary Blues cruise, and our family, we have a few people who are immune system compromised, and we opted to pass and push everything to 2023. So this is the second year in a row that we've had to cancel and pass. However, being on a cruise ship didn't have the same appeal right now that it typically has. So, so no travel for me as well. So we have a new piece of business. Rebecca, is that back to you, or we have a guest presenting?
So I think that Brett is online and is going to walk us through this. Let me introduce this topic, though.
Okay.
This is the Ed Stimson Memorial Marker. And I think many of you served on this commission with Ed. He was recognized for his service to our aviation community with a marker off of Gowan Road. And Ed Stimson Way was actually renamed to honor him. And as we are growing and changing, we need to relocate that. And so Brett, if you are on, I will turn it over to you to walk us through this.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. I'm assuming you can hear me, or everyone can hear me.
I can hear you, and I have your slides, so I will help you with the slide presentation part.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't think I've had a chance to meet many of you, but my name is Brett Corporal. I started as a airport project manager here at the airport just over 6 months ago now. So it sounds like I'm a product of the implementation of our organizational assessment we talked about, but excited to be here. And one of the first projects I had started on since starting is this Harvard Street closure. And the Harvard Street closure is really brought on by a lease amendment with the Guard. And if we can picture Harvard Street, it's on the south side of the airport. It runs east to west between Zeppelin Street and Ed Stimson Way, just north of the control tower. And what we're looking to do is, as part of the lease amendment, the airport recaptured a portion of leased property from the Guard in the southeast portion of the airport site for taxiway Sierra, the SkyWest hangar, Amazon, and the new cargo facility. And in exchange, the Guard will be getting that piece of property there shown in the middle of the image between the air traffic control tower and the Boise trucking company there to the west on the left. Additionally, we'll be closing Harvard Street to provide a secured buffer to the helicopter apron to the north, just not allowing public access along Harvard Street any longer. And to block that public access, there will be 2 new cul-de-sacs on the end of each street, Zeppelin and Stimson. The next slide, Rebecca. So the proposed design includes, as I mentioned, the 2 cul-de-sacs, one on the end of Stimson Way and Zeppelin Street. Another main component will be the 2 new swing gates to the north of each of those cul-de-sacs to maintain access for the Guard into the base. They'll operate and maintain those swing gates to Harvard and into the base. And then another component is a new access for the air traffic control tower. Currently, their main access is along Harvard Street. So we'd be moving that main access down to the cul-de-sac on Ed Stimson Way. And lastly, the Ed Stimson Memorial Marker is located on the southwest corner of Harvard and Stimson. And one of the main reasons we wanted to present this to the commission was just to get your thoughts on where may be the best location or most appropriate location to relocate the memorial markers so it's not forgotten or left behind the closed fence and not accessible via or to the public. At the moment, the memorial marker is proposed in the kind of that southwest portion of the cul-de-sac as Ed Stimson Way approaches the cul-de-sac. There's a few alternative locations that we're looking at as well. 2 to the north, there's a few parking spots that'll be going in near the entrance to the tower, and as well as another location potentially on the east side of the cul-de-sac as the cul-de-sac kind of veers to the west. So with that, welcome to take any questions or comments, or see if the commission had any thoughts on a preferred location, but we wanted to just open it up for discussion and also make the commission aware of the relocation of Ed Stimson Memorial Marker. Thank you.
I have a question. What were the criteria that you used to select the 4 potential locations, and why did you end up with the one you did that you're proposing?
Sure, thanks, Meg. So, honestly, this proposed location, we wanted it in basically where the road ends is coming to an end. The location wasn't vetted between us and the engineer. We knew we had to move it, so we decided towards the end of that roadway. But looking at it further, wanted to get the commission's thoughts on alternative locations. The locations to the north, there's a light pole, a new light going in, which I thought may be appropriate. So that way the memorial, within the vicinity of the light, that way the memorial marker is lit throughout the night. There's also to the north, the 3 parking spots there. So if anyone was to park and get out and take a look, they're not, parked in the middle of the roadway. That was kind of a similar discussion point to the location on the east side of the cul-de-sac, on the right side. Just having it up a little further into the cul-de-sac, basically where the roadway terminates at the cul-de-sac there.
I think the proposed location is where we thought it would have most visibility.
Mhm.
So I think any of these locations can work. And some of it is just a preference, but the reason that the proposed location was selected over others was really just because of visibility, and we wanted to give it maximum visibility. As Brett has said, I think the other spaces could work as well. There is not really a right or wrong answer, but knowing that members of our commission, many of you served with Ed, and this really is to honor him, we wanted to get your input if you had any preferences.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I think I'm the only member of the commission that served with Ed when he was on the commission.
No, I also served, Russ.
Were you there? Anyway,
Yeah.
I would share with you, Ed was a real visionary and a leader, and actually had a hand in the new tower construction and the Tracon location and a variety of other things. So I would highly recommend we put the memorial to him at a place where it's visible and the public can see it and relate it to the tower.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I kind of like the area where the parking lots are close to the tower, like Russ said, for the simple fact that, and I'm not sure what the answer is, the proposed location is there's no parking places, so you'd only be able to access it via car. So the people who actually park and get out would be more likely to read the sign.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I also served when Ed was still on the board.
Mhm.
I agree with the last comment. I think putting it up by the parking spot where people are actually going to stop, get out of the car, and maybe have a chance to look at the sign and read what it says about Ed and his vision would be the most appropriate. I just worry about the proposed location. It's kind of like the current location. People drive by and see it, but they don't really stop to read what it says about him. And so I also think one of the alternative locations by the parking spots would probably get the most people who actually stop and understand who and what Ed did for the airport.
I absolutely agree with those comments.
Thank you. Any other comments?
It seems like there's consensus, and
Yes.
the direction of the commission will move forward with exploring the potential of the spaces adjacent to the parking spaces.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Thank you for bringing this to the commission for consideration. We appreciate being included.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
All right, at this point, we would open up to the general public. Any questions or answers for the commission and staff? With anybody who would like to speak would be given 5 minutes to approach us and talk about what's on their mind. Do we have anybody in a Zoom who
Greg
is
Russell
interested?
And
I'm sorry, what?
I see a Greg Russell has raised his hand, or a G Russell. I'm assuming it's Greg. That's an assumption on my part.
Yes, I see his hand. You're welcome to speak.
Thank you. Good morning, Airport Commission. My name is Dr. Greg Russell, and I am here to address you this morning with concerns that our neighborhood has. I'm the president of the Boise Open Space Organization. We are an organization that was formed to oppose the massive industrial park that the Boise Airport is planning to build next to our neighborhood and community. We are a group who advocates for equity within the city of Boise, particularly when it comes to open space and land and protecting the character and charm of Boise's many neighborhoods. Our group is made up of over 250 concerned citizens, and it grows on a daily basis. And this is much larger than just the citizens of Indian Lake subdivision. This is a city of Boise and a Southwest Boise situation. I'm speaking this morning to share our concerns about this proposed development. While my research cannot clearly determine what the mission of the Boise Airport is, as it is not clearly stated in the Boise Airport's master plan, I'm left to assume it is to promote aviation, provide the necessary services to fuel the city of Boise, while being good stewards both financially and to the citizens of the Treasure Valley. It is this goal of serving the citizens of Boise that has offended us so deeply. The Boise Airport looks to harm certain citizens and their neighbors under the guise of benefit for all. The Boise Airport has lacked transparency through this whole process. From the very first neighborhood meeting, which was for the neighbors and the airport officials to discuss concerns, the airport's selected developer was allowed to not only attend, but to antagonize the neighbors with comments about how we as neighbors should have purchased this property and how we should not be upset because this is what progress looks like. Comments outside the meeting, in the parking lot, like you can't stop this. I've seen this happen all over California, only deepened this resentment. When neighbors asked basic questions about how much revenue these parcels would generate and what do you plan to build back there, there was no clear answer. Despite the airport and developer having a scope and vision of the project with conceptual layouts and a timeline. When this information was requested in public records requests, it took local media's lawyers to get involved to release this information, despite the fact that the Boise Airport's very own RFI clearly states that documents involved in the RFI are public record. I ask you, is this being a good neighbor? The airport claims it must use this land to benefit aviation to generate revenue. There is no one here today that understands revenue better than myself. I am a superintendent of schools. I oversee and responsible for over 1,500 accounts, $130 million operating budget of both federal and general funds, 1,200 employees, 13,000 students, 25 schools in the 50th worst funded state in the union. I get revenue and understand the need for it. However, I also get that civic entities have an obligation to balance revenue with the mission of their organizations, and that is serving and caring for the entire community. This has not occurred. The airport has continued to use the excuse that FAA regulations require them to do exactly what they are planning. There is no FAA regulation that requires an airport to build 55-foot warehouses, 1,000 feet long, 60 feet from a neighborhood. There is no regulation that allows the airport to destroy home equity values and essentially take money from residents who have lived peacefully in a neighborhood for over 40 years. There is no regulation that allows civic entities to do no environmental studies on diesel fumes, noise and light pollution, traffic, fire coverage, and loss of wildlife habitat. But this is what the Boise Airport wants to do in the name of revenue. There are alternatives. There are alternatives to generating revenue, and there are ways to meet the mutual interests of the neighborhoods and the city of Boise and the airport. A compromise can be struck here, but the leadership of the airport has been headstrong to ignore these requests, all in the name of FAA regulations and money. As the governing board, I ask you to walk this property. The upper A2 permanent open space parcel is one of the most beautiful, breathtaking pieces of property in the entire city. It is filled with migrating birds, coyotes, snakes, jackrabbits, cottontails, wildflowers, and 80-year-old sagebrush. In the evening, as the sun sets, the mountain glows in deep blue colors of crimson and blue shadows. This land has everything, if not more than the Boise foothills. This land needs protection. When this land is bulldozed in the name of revenue, it will never come back. I ask you to walk this land and see for yourself if the proposed plans and the hypothetical revenue that the developer has pitched to you on the A2 parcels of land is worth destroying something that could be saved and cherished for generations. I urge you as a board to meet with airport leadership, city officials, and the neighborhood association to find an equitable solution. Be transparent. There is a development agreement being made as we speak, and again, the neighborhood association has not seen it. Quit hiding, slow down, and work with your citizens. I will repeat, quit hiding, slow down, and work with your citizens. When there is a desire for resolution and a willingness to come to a table to hear concerns and explore possibilities, great agreements can be accomplished. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your coming before us today. Are there questions from commissioners for Dr. Russell?
I think that it would be appropriate if we could, Chair, for Amy Snyder, who is our representative who's been handling this project for us, to give the commission a little bit more background. I think that some of the things that Dr. Russell has stated would not be accurate from my perspective, and I would like Amy to share the airport's perspective with you. So I know that Amy is on this call as well. So Chair, if that would be acceptable to you, I would ask that you call on Amy next.
Yep.
Amy Snyder.
Yeah, Amy Snyder, you are able to speak to the commission.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Director. Sorry, this is the first time I've spoken this morning, and apparently I don't have a very good voice today. The application for rezone of the property that is currently under discussion by Dr. Russell was submitted according to the City of Boise rules and regulations. It is identified by the Boise City Comp Plan as industrial use, and the M1D zone, which is light manufacturing with design review, is an approved zone for property adjacent to residential. The airport purchased the property in 1990 when it was in Ada County, zoned RP rural preservation. In the 2000, I think around 2006, the City of Boise did a bulk annexation of all of the city's property that was not in the city limits at the time that was eligible to be annexed. And so this was part of a bulk annexation, and the planning and zoning department determined, I'm not sure why, that they brought it in as an A2 zone. It was our understanding as a placeholder, because the city comp plan has always identified this as industrial. So I think they were the A1 and A2, in my opinion, were pretty interchangeable, which meant open space placeholders. Now I understand, unfortunately, these A2 zone does the word permanent open space in its language, but we were just following the requirements. If the city comp plans identifies property as industrial and the majority of the property surrounding it is industrial, and the M1 zone is appropriate to be next to residential, that's how we chose the zone, and we coordinating with the planning and zoning department on that. Now, when we went before the Planning and Zoning Commission with our public hearing, after hearing comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission, it was clear that they wanted to see a little bit more information and create some sort of a development agreement, which is completely different than the developer agreement. We're entering into a master developer agreement with Adler. for the Area 1 and Area 2, and that is separate from the development agreement that the Planning and Zoning Commission are wanting us to attach to the property, because that would be part of the rezone itself. And we're still working towards what we have not developed that yet. So we are working with the planning department and the mayor's office to figure out what would be appropriate in that development agreement, which would be some sort of a setback buffer area, and what maybe possibly some sort of restrictions on what the development could be. Right now, typically what we're planning is warehousing in that area, which is a very low, I'm sorry, I'm not a planner, so I'm probably not going to say the right word, but it's an appropriate use. And, but again, those details have not been worked out, because this property, we are rezoning it before we attach it to the developer agreement with Adler, because it's not going to be included if it's not rezoned. So we're just trying to get to that point where it can be rezoned at this point in time. So there is no tenant for the property. There is no for sure idea what will be constructed on the property, because it will be most likely build to suit. And there is no tenant for the property yet. And once we do have a tenant for the property, it will go through the city's design review process, which is very stringent. And we fully anticipate that it would be a benefit. But we do fully understand the neighbors' concerns, but we are not the Parks and Rec department, and we are not open space for recreational purposes. That's not the charter for the Boise Airport. And so that's we're just following the process like a normal applicant would follow. Is that pretty much what you were thinking, Rebecca? Or can I provide more information?
No, I think that was good. And I would ask if commission has comments for Amy. I would just add to that. And I think the commission knows us well enough to know that there is nothing underhanded or secretive about this process. We went through a public process to request proposals. And typically proposals, while they will become public eventually, are not public until a deal is finalized, because in a situation where you have people competing against each other before there is a final agreement, it could give someone competitive insight into the other's proposal. And that's why we don't release that information ahead of time. And the comments that were attributed to our developer were actually not made by the developer. It was actually made by another neighbor, not one of our developers. So I just want to be clear that we always strive to be a good neighbor. This property has been identified for a long time in the Boise blueprint as being future industrial. And that is what we do is, as an airport, is develop our property to support the airport. As Amy stated, we are not a recreational facility. So I did see that other people had their hands raised, and I would be happy to answer questions from the commission or have Amy answer questions if there are. I see Councilor Badgett has his hand raised. I can't, and there's one other who had his hand raised. I saw Dr. Russell had raised his hand again, and Kristen Nelson has raised her hand as well.
Madam Chair, can I just chime in very briefly on this last item?
I see Meg nodding.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, good. Just for framing, for context for any of the public who's listening as well, right? We have comprehensive plans that discuss long-term future planning, and we have existing zoning that describes how you can use the land now. And they don't always line up, because the future-looking documents talk about how land can be used in the future, whereas the existing zoning talks about how land can be used now. There's a process to change that. This commission isn't really involved with that. It's the Planning and Zoning Commission's job to look at a proposal to change a land use, to balance the potential adverse impacts, to take public testimony from anyone who's interested, which always includes the adjacent neighbors. That's a very public process. It hasn't even really begun yet. And then after all of that's done, we do it all over again at the city council with another public hearing where everyone is invited to come in, share their thoughts. And we take all of those concerns very, very seriously. You know, the comprehensive plan isn't the final say. The land use zoning rules aren't the final say. We try hard to balance these things. So just to the member of the public who came in today, this isn't necessarily the best place, but more important for what your concerns are. There's two opportunities to hear from everybody on exactly the issues that you raised. And we're going to be looking for them, and we're going to be listening to you hard when that time comes.
Thank you. I'm unable to see who else has their hand raised, so Rebecca, I'll defer to you.
I don't see anyone else with the hand raised at this time.
Okay. So it sounds like this process, as you alerted us to earlier, Rebecca, we've slowed it down already and moving forward and following the appropriate procedures. And we appreciate Dr. Russell coming forward and sharing the concerns of his neighborhood with us so that we have some awareness. And thank you always, Amy, for your comprehensive conversation about your approach.
I see one more now that I'm looking at my participant list. I see, if I could, one more person who has not spoken yet, who has their hand raised, and that is Kristen Nelson.
Okay, Kristen.
Hi, thank you. I have a comment and then I have a question. I would like to disagree with the statement that the developer did not make those statements in the community meeting. I was there also, and I heard him make those statements. He spoke without being prompted or asked to speak, and so he was very antagonistic towards the people in the meeting. So that's just my comment. I was there and I saw him myself. My question is that I'm confused about the process with the development plan, and when with the February 14th deadline for the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm wondering when we can see a development plan for the parcels in question. And is it going to be different from what we've already seen that was submitted?
I'm going to have to defer to Amy for the specifics for when the development plan would be and the timeline for those meetings. Amy, do you know that information?
Madam Chair, Director Hupp, I would have to defer to the Planning and Zoning Department, but it's my understanding 5 days prior to the hearing, they will load everything onto the system. So it's my understanding there will be a draft, but it is subject to change based upon the public hearing. So we will go forth with a proposal, a proposed development agreement, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission could make changes to that and recommend it to go forward to City Council. So I'm not, I just believe all of that would be loaded onto the Planning and Zoning's page 5 days prior to the hearing, but I'm not 100% sure. So I would recommend you check with the zoning info at cityofboise.org. I'm sorry. I think you all have that email address.
Thank you.
And I don't think that Russ has actually raised his hand, but Commissioner Westerberg is gesturing that he would like.
Yes. Yes, I can see that. Commissioner Westerberg.
Madam Chairman and Rebecca, I think I agree with Councilman Padgett that this is out of our pay grade and not really our responsibility. This planning and zoning in the city's issue more than the airport commission's duty, I suspect here. Am I wrong?
I second that comment. I
No.
agree entirely with what Councilman Badgett had to say about the process. And there will be lots of opportunity and probably some late night meetings for the council and maybe P&Z. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Any other comments or questions? Anything else, Rebecca, you're seeing?
I am not seeing anything else.
All right. Very well. Then I believe we are in a position to call for an adjournment. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move we adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you virtually, and let's look forward to an in-person conversation in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.